Can you hide me from my daddy?" The voice was so small, so fragile it barely rose above the roar of motorcycle engines. But the impact was instant. 12 hardened bikers froze mid-laughter inside a dimly lit garage. A little girl, no more than 6, stood trembling in the doorway. Her pink backpack hung heavy on her shoulders, almost bigger than her tiny frame. For a moment, nobody moved. These were men who'd spent half their lives in bar fights, prison cells, and back-alley deals. They weren't used to being caught off guard. But this was different. Razor, the president of the Devil's Outcasts, stepped forward. A scar ran across his face like a thunderbolt, his eyes cold as steel. "What did you just say, sweetheart?" The girl swallowed hard. I don't want to go with Daddy, please. Can you hide me?" The laughter died completely. Chairs scraped the floor as the men slowly rose. Chains, the enforcer, a mountain of muscle with tattoos creeping up his neck, took a step closer, his voice rough but careful. "What's your name, little one?" "Emma," she whispered. "Emma Rodriguez." She clutched her backpack tighter as if it held her entire world. And in a way, it did. Razor crouched to meet her eyes. "Where's your mommy, Emma?" Her lips quivered. "Mommy's sleeping in heaven. Daddy said so, but—" She hesitated, voice breaking. "I think Daddy made her go to sleep." The men exchanged sharp looks. Every one of them had seen blood before. They knew what she meant by red stuff on her head. Before anyone could react, Emma unzipped her backpack with trembling hands. Out came a kitchen knife, its blade caked with dried blood. The room went silent. My mommy said, "If something bad happened, I should take evidence." Her eyes, wide and wet, locked onto Razor's. Is this evidence? Even for a gang of outlaws, it was too much. But Emma wasn't done. She pulled out a small digital camera. The screen flickered to life, showing photo after photo. Bruises, black eyes, cuts. 47 pictures in total, each one worse than the last. Proof of months of abuse. Proof no one could ignore. The bikers shifted uncomfortably, their leather vests creaking in the stillness. Then she reached deeper into the backpack and revealed a tiny flash drive dangling from a Hello Kitty keychain. Mommy said this is important too. She said the police wouldn't believe her without proof. She said I had to keep it safe. Razor's jaw tightened. He didn't know what was on that drive, but he could tell it was dangerous. And that's when Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Please, don't let Daddy find me. He's coming. He told me when he gets back, we're going on a trip where nobody will ever find us." Engines growled in the distance. Headlights flashed against the garage doors. The men turned as one, instincts flaring. Emma whispered, barely audible over the rumble, "That's Daddy now." The roar of engines outside grew louder, shaking the garage doors on their hinges. The bikers exchanged glances, each man's hand instinctively twitching toward weapons hidden in leather vests. But before the headlights pierced the darkness, Razor turned back to the girl. "Emma," he said low and steady, "what's in that backpack? Is there more?" Her small hands trembled as she dug deeper into the bag. Out came something that made even these hardened men stiffen. A flash drive. Cheap, plastic, dangling from a pink Hello Kitty keychain. "My mommy told me this was the most important part," Emma whispered. She said, "This little computer thing has all the proof. Names, dates, money, bad things Daddy and his friends did. She said if anything ever happened to her, I had to give it to the police." The garage fell into a silence so heavy it pressed down on everyone's chest. Chains shifted, his voice a low growl. "Kid, do you even know what's on that thing?" Emma shook her head. "No, Mommy said it was too dangerous. But she said one day it could put monsters in cages." Razor took the flash drive carefully, holding it between two scarred fingers as if it might explode. He'd seen evidence like this before, files that could burn empires to the ground. Emma's voice cracked. "Daddy said, when he comes back tonight we're leaving. Forever. Somewhere the police can't find us. He said, if I tell anyone, I'll end up like Mommy." The words hung in the air like a curse. "Jesus Christ," muttered Snake, one of the older bikers, his tattoos faded by years of prison. "This ain't just some drunk with a temper. This is cartel business." Razor's eyes darkened, and she walked straight into our house for protection. Emma hugged the backpack tight. Her tiny voice steadied, almost rehearsed like she was clinging to her mother's last instructions. Mommy said if anything really bad happened, I should find the scary-looking people who fight monsters. That's you, right? For the first time in years, a room full of criminals went speechless. Then came the sound that shattered the silence. Car doors slamming outside, Emma's face drained of color. That's Daddy's friends, she whispered. Her knees buckled and she staggered backward until chains caught her gently with a hand the size of a shovel. 3 sets of headlights cut through the cracks in the garage doors. Engines idled low, menacing, like wolves circling prey. The bikers fanned out in formation. 12 men who had lived their lives outside the law, suddenly bound by an unspoken oath. Razor tucked the flash drive into his vest pocket and locked eyes with his brothers. No one touches the kid, not while we breathe. The garage door began to rise. A blinding beam of light split the darkness. Emma pressed her face into Razor's leather jacket and whispered, "Please, don't let them take me." The men who entered weren't just drunk thugs. They carried themselves with military precision, their eyes cold and empty. One of them barked in Spanish to the others. Cartel, no doubt. And then, staggering out of the lead car, her father appeared. His voice slurred with alcohol, but his grip on the pistol was steady. "Emma!" he roared, spit flying from his lips. "You think you can hide from me? You've got something that belongs to me, and I'll burn this place to the ground before I let you keep it." The bikers stiffened, muscles coiling like springs. But it was Emma, trembling but unbroken, who stepped forward from behind Razor's leg, her tiny fists clenched at her sides. "You hurt Mommy," she said. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but the room froze to hear it. "You made her go to sleep forever, and now, the police will know everything." Her father's face twisted with rage. "You little brat, you've cost us everything." "I should have." He never finished the sentence, because that was the moment the devil's outcasts decided Emma Rodriguez was theirs to protect. The pistol in Emma's father's hand gleamed under the buzzing garage lights. He staggered forward, veins bulging on his neck, his voice a drunken snarl. "Give me the drive, Emma. Now." 2 cartel soldiers flanked him, stone-faced, their weapons already raised. Their movements weren't sloppy like his. They were controlled, practiced, dangerous. Razor took a step forward, planting himself between Emma and the guns. "She's not going anywhere with you," her father sneered. "You think you can stop me? You don't know what you're dealing with. That drive has our entire operation on it. Names, money, shipments. If the cops get it, we're all dead." One of the cartel men barked in Spanish. "No witnesses." His weapon rose higher. The bikers shifted instantly into formation. 12 men who'd lived by the code of survival. Chains cracked his knuckles, Tank reached behind his belt, Snake flexed his fists like coiled steel. The air buzzed with violence. But in the middle of it all stood Emma, her pink backpack slipping off one shoulder, her tiny frame dwarfed by leather and guns. "Daddy," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "You hurt Mommy. You made her go to sleep forever." Her father's face twisted with rage. "You shut your mouth," he bellowed, spittle flying. "You don't understand what you've done. That flash drive will get us all killed. You ruined everything." Emma took one shaky step forward, lifting her chin. "Mommy told me the truth always wins, and now the police will know what you are." For the first time, her father faltered. The words hit harder than any punch. His hand shook on the pistol. "Little brat," he hissed. "I should have gotten rid of you the same night I got rid of her." That was the breaking point. Razor's eyes narrowed. He gave a single nod. And then the garage erupted. It lasted 90 seconds. Violent, precise, unforgettable. The bikers moved as one, like a pack of wolves defending their cub. Chains lunged first, knocking the pistol from the father's hand. Tank tackled one cartel soldier into a wall, the impact rattling shelves of tools. Snake slipped under the other's arm, twisting until a rifle clattered to the floor. The sounds were brutal, fists thudding against flesh, metal scraping concrete, a gunshot ringing wild into the ceiling. Sparks flew as a wrench clattered across the floor. Emma didn't scream. She didn't hide. She watched, her little hands clenched into fists, as the men who looked like monsters turned into her protectors. When it was over, 3 grown men lay zip-tied and unconscious, sprawled across the concrete floor. The garage stank of sweat, smoke, and gunpowder. Emma walked forward slowly, her shoes scuffing on the stained floor. She bent down, picked up the pistol her father had dropped, and carried it carefully with both hands. "This goes to the police, too," she whispered, her voice steady as steel. "More evidence." The bikers stared at her, 6 years old, clutching a gun like it was nothing more than another piece of proof. Razor knelt, taking the weapon gently from her hands. "It's over, sweetheart," but in his eyes, he knew. It wasn't over. Not yet, because the evidence Emma carried in her backpack was enough to tear a cartel apart. And men that dangerous wouldn't stop with one failed raid, and the devil's outcasts had just made themselves her family. The police sirens didn't arrive for another 20 minutes. In that silence, the bikers cleaned blood from their knuckles, checked zip ties, and poured whiskey into tin cups with shaking hands. But their eyes weren't on the men sprawled unconscious on the floor. They were on Emma. The little girl sat cross-legged on a stool, her backpack still clutched to her chest. Her dark hair fell in tangled waves, her eyes wide but strangely calm. She had walked through fire, and somehow she was still standing. When the cruiser lights finally painted the walls in blue and red, Emma didn't flinch. She slid off the stool and walked straight to the officers, lifting the pink backpack like a sacred offering. "Here," she said. "This has everything you need." Inside, 47 photos, a bloodied knife, a digital camera, and a flash drive full of secrets powerful enough to bring down a cartel. The cops tried to take Emma with them that night, but she clung to Razor's leather vest. Tiny fists knotted into the fabric. "I'm not leaving," she whispered. "Mommy said the scary-looking people fight monsters. That's you. You keep me safe." The social worker, Margaret Stevens, arrived within hours. A stern woman in her 50s. She looked at the outcasts like they were animals in a cage. "Mr. Rodriguez," she said firmly, clipboard in hand, "you are the president of a criminal organization with multiple felony convictions. The state will never allow you to keep custody of this child." Razor crossed his tattooed arms. "Then the state's got a problem, because she chose us. And we don't give up family." For 3 weeks, Emma refused to leave the clubhouse. She slept in the meeting room, her tiny bed surrounded by 12 sleeping bags as grown men took shifts keeping watch. The walls, once plastered with outlaw flags, now bore crayon drawings of rainbows, motorcycles, and the words Little Warriors Club scribbled in shaky letters. The first test came on day 4. Snake found Emma in the garage, tears streaking her face as she sat beside his Harley. "What's wrong, little warrior?" he asked gently. "I miss Mommy," she whispered, "and I'm scared the bad dreams are going to come back." Snake froze. Violence, he understood. Fear, he understood. But how do you fix a broken heart? He crouched awkwardly beside her, his voice rough but kind. "You know what my granny used to tell me? When you miss someone in heaven, you gotta talk to them out loud so they can hear you. Want to try?" Emma wiped her nose with the back of her hand and nodded. She closed her eyes, her voice trembling but clear. "Hi, Mommy. I'm okay now. The scary men fought Daddy, just like you said they would. And they're teaching me how to be brave like you were." By the time she finished, not a single biker had a dry eye. The second test came at night. Emma woke up screaming, thrashing against invisible nightmares. Chains, the enforcer with teardrop tattoos under his eyes, rushed in first. The sight of this hulking giant trying to soothe a crying 6-year-old would have been comical, if it wasn't so raw. "You're safe, little warrior," Chains said softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "The monsters can't get you here. But what if they come back?" Emma sobbed. Chains scratched the back of his neck, then lowered his booming voice to a whisper. "Well, monsters are scared of bigger monsters. And sweetheart, we're the biggest monsters in the whole state. They'll never touch you again," Emma sniffled, eyes wide. "Promise. I promise. You call for Uncle Chains and I'll come running. Even if I'm sleeping, even if I'm fixing my bike, even if I'm in the shower. That's what family does." From that night forward, the nightmares still came, but Emma never faced them alone. The third test was the hardest. 2 weeks in, Emma fell sick with a fever. Hardened criminals turned into frantic nursemaids overnight. Tank paced the hallway. Doc flipped through an outdated medical manual like it was scripture. Snake brought ice chips, while Demon sat at her bedside humming lullabies from his own childhood. When her fever finally broke at dawn, Emma opened her eyes to find 12 bikers asleep in chairs around her bed. Coffee cups scattered, leather jackets draped like blankets. "You all stayed?" she asked softly. Razor rubbed his eyes, exhaustion in every line of his face. "Of course we did, sweetheart. That's what daddies and uncles do." Margaret Stevens, the social worker, watched from the doorway. Her professional skepticism cracked a little more that day. 3 months later, the Devil's Outcasts found themselves in a place no biker gang ever imagined: the family court of Judge Patricia Williams. The state attorney's voice cut through the hushed courtroom. "Your Honor, these men are dangerous criminals. They've spent their lives outside the law, solving problems with violence. This child needs stability, proper role models, not men who think justice comes from their fists." Emma sat between Razor and Chains in the front row, her feet swinging nervously above the floor. She wore a yellow dress Margaret Stevens had picked out for her, but she clutched her pink backpack like armor. Razor's lawyer stood next, a thin man in a wrinkled suit, but his words landed like hammers. "Your Honor, these men risked their lives to save Emma Rodriguez. They've given her more love and stability in 6 weeks than she had in her entire life. Ask her teachers. Ask her doctors. Ask anyone who's seen her transformation." The judge adjusted her glasses, flipping through the thick case file. "Emma," she said gently, "do you understand what's happening here today?" Emma slid off her chair, her small voice filling the silent room. "Yes, ma'am. Some people think my new family is too scary to take care of me. But they don't understand that sometimes the scariest-looking people have the biggest hearts." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Even the stenographer paused her typing. "And do you want to stay with Mr. Rodriguez?" the judge asked. Emma turned to Razor, then back to the judge. "He's my daddy now, and all the uncles protect me. They keep the monsters away." The room fell silent. Judge Williams studied Emma for a long moment, then glanced at Margaret Stevens. "Mrs. Stevens, your recommendation?" The social worker rose slowly. For months, she had inspected, tested, doubted. But her voice was steady now. "Your Honor, in 30 years of social work, I've never seen a child heal as completely as Emma has in the past 3 months. These men have created something I didn't think was possible, a stable, loving home that also acknowledges the reality of the world she's lived in. Emma doesn't just feel safe, she feels empowered. My recommendation is to grant custody to Mr. Rodriguez." The judge tapped her gavel once. Custody granted. The room erupted. 12 bikers cheered like their team had won the Super Bowl. Margaret Stevens blinked back tears she didn't know she had, but it was Emma who stole the moment. She launched herself into Razor's arms, her tiny voice ringing clear across the courtroom. "Daddy!" The word broke every wall left in the room. That night, the Outcasts threw the biggest party in their history, not for a deal scored or a rival defeated, but for a little girl who had turned criminals into fathers. The Devil's Outcasts clubhouse didn't look the same anymore. The long meeting table, once covered in maps and contraband, now held coloring books, crayons, and spelling homework. Leather jackets hung beside a row of tiny coats and backpacks. The walls, once plastered with outlaw flags, now displayed Emma's drawings, rainbows, motorcycles with wings, and stick figures labeled Daddy Razor and Uncle Chains. The men who had once been feared as criminals were learning skills they never thought they'd need. Tank, the brawler, practiced braiding Emma's hair with clumsy hands until he got it right. Snake, who used to settle debts with fists, now read bedtime stories in a gravelly voice that made fairy tales sound like war sagas. Chains, the enforcer with teardrop tattoos, became her shadow at night, chasing away nightmares with the promise, "Monsters fear us more than you fear them." But Emma gave as much as she received. One Saturday morning, she gathered the bikers in the garage with a piece of paper in hand. "I'm starting a club," she announced, her little chin lifted high. "It's called Little Warriors. It's for kids like me, kids who've seen bad things. I'm going to teach them what Mommy taught me, how to be brave, how to take pictures when grown-ups are mean, and how to find safe people who fight monsters." The men exchanged glances. Razor knelt down, his scarred face softening. "And who are the safe people, sweetheart?" Emma pointed around the room. "You." Silence fell. For a moment, even these hardened men couldn't meet each other's eyes. They had lived through violence, carried sins that couldn't be erased. But in Emma's eyes, they weren't criminals. They were heroes. Word spread quickly. Within months, little warriors had grown to dozens of children, kids who had lived through fear, neglect, and abuse. The outcasts transformed their garage into a refuge. Juice boxes sat beside beer cans in the fridge. Crayons were stacked next to engine grease. They held self-defense classes, taught kids how to document abuse safely, and even worked with local teachers to tutor struggling students. The local sheriff, once their enemy, began calling them for help on cases where traditional systems had failed. Families too scared to speak to police found courage with the outcasts. Razor stood in the garage one evening, watching Emma lead a circle of children in games. She was laughing, real laughter, free of the shadows that had once haunted her. He felt something shift in his chest. "Never thought I'd see the day," Snake muttered beside him. Razor grunted. "What's that?" "Us. Protecting kids instead of running from cops." Razor's eyes stayed on Emma. "We were always monsters, Snake. But she taught us how to be the right kind of monster." Chains, listening nearby, added quietly, "And she made us a family." The garage filled with children's laughter. For the first time, it wasn't the sound of engines or fists that defined the devil's outcasts. It was the sound of healing. 1 year later, the devil's outcasts' garage looked nothing like the hideout it once was. The walls were still rough concrete, the floors still stained with oil, but the heart of the place had changed forever. Every Saturday morning, children poured in, 32 in all. Kids who had lived through neglect, violence, and fear. Kids who once felt invisible. Now they wore little warriors patches Emma had drawn herself, sewn onto backpacks and jackets. The bikers, once known only for leather and lawlessness, became protectors and mentors. Tank taught the kids how to fix bikes. Snake led storytelling circles. Demon coached them in self-defense drills. Even Chains, the man who once terrified entire neighborhoods, could be found teaching a 7-year-old how to stand tall and say, "No more." Emma was at the center of it all. 10 years old now, she still carried her pink backpack, but its contents had changed. No longer a blood-stained knife and hidden flash drive, now it held crayons, notebooks, emergency contacts for scared kids, and a disposable camera for those who needed to document abuse. On the anniversary of the night she first walked into their garage, the outcasts threw a gathering. Families, neighbors, teachers, even the sheriff showed up. Emma stood on a crate in the middle of the garage, her voice small but steady. "I used to think monsters were stronger than me," she said. "But then I found out monsters are scared too. They're scared of truth. They're scared of people who fight back. And sometimes the scariest-looking people have the biggest hearts." Her words silenced the room. Hardened criminals wiped their eyes. Teachers bowed their heads. The sheriff crossed his arms, fighting back a lump in his throat. Razor stepped forward, placing a hand on Emma's shoulder. "You saved us, sweetheart. We thought we were protecting you. But the truth is, you gave us something worth living for." The crowd erupted in applause. The sound echoed off the garage walls, louder than any motorcycle engine ever had. Today, the flash drive that exposed Emma's father sits in FBI evidence storage, its secrets long since dismantled. Her mother's photos hang framed in the clubhouse, not as scars but as reminders of the truth that started it all. And Emma herself, she still dreams of becoming a police officer one day, one who makes sure no other child is ignored the way she once was. The devil's outcasts never stopped being outlaws. But now, they were outlaws with a mission, to be the shield between children and the monsters who thought no one was watching. And Emma? She was their proof that heroes can come in all sizes. So, if this story moved you like it moved us, remember this. Family isn't about blood, or clean records, or looking the part. Family is about who stands beside you when the monsters come. Smash that like button if you believe every child deserves protection. Drop a comment. Would you trust the scariest-looking people to protect the smallest, most fragile lives? And subscribe, because stories like Emma's remind us that hope often hides in the most unexpected places. Because sometimes, the most dangerous men make the gentlest fathers.